Well, Shabbat Shalom. So last week, you might have noticed I wasn't here because I was in San Antonio for the Society of Biblical Literature conference. The annual meeting of the Society of Biblical Literature draws probably 10 to 15,000 Bible scholars from all over the world together to discuss papers, and it's the leading conference in the world for Bible scholars. And it's fascinating and wonderful to be in discussion and conversations with Bible scholars who are Jewish from every possible kind of Christian, So it's interesting. You're in there dialoguing with, some people are wearing collars, some people are in these Orthodox priest robes, right? As well as nerdy academics and other kinds of scholars. And so it's really an exciting time, and it's a wonderful time to be together. Last year I presented at the conference, and I didn't this year. But anyway, that's why I wasn't here. So I was nerding out with a bunch of other Bible nerds in San Antonio. I have to say it was nice to be where it was a little warmer than it is here. The first day I arrived, it was like 80 degrees. It's like, I kind of miss this. So in this week's Torah portion we just read, Jacob is fleeing from his brother Esav, who wants to kill him. He stopped at a certain place to spend the night, and after laying his head down on a rock and falling asleep, he had a dream. In Jacob's dream, he saw a vision of a ladder that reached from the ground into the heavens, and the angels of God were ascending and descending upon it. God spoke to him and relayed the promise of giving the land of Israel to him and his descendants, that he would multiply Jacob's offspring, and that through his descendants all the people on earth would be blessed. Then God concluded by reassuring Jacob that he would not abandon him, for he had made a promise to him. In verse 11, we read this interesting single verse where it says, Vayifka b'makom vayalen sham, kiva hashemesh vayivkach me'avanei hamakom, vayasem roshotav vayishkav b'makom hahu. He encountered the place and spent the night there because the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of the place and put it under his head and lay down in that place. 3 different times in just a single verse it mentions this word, hamakom, the place. The 15th century Spanish commentator Abravanel notes that verse 11 uses the word makom 3 different times. Why 3 times in just one verse? Isn't it a little repetitious? Anybody who's ever had training in writing knows that you shouldn't put the same word, too close together, right? So why does the Torah use this word hamakom 3 different times in a single verse? According to Rabbi Isamar Shorsh, who is a former chancellor of the Jewish Theological Seminary, he writes, the Torah is not guilty here of laziness. Rather, the repetition suggests tension. On the surface, the Torah conveys the unplanned nature of Jacob stopping for the night. The anonymity of the place reinforces the impression of happenstance. Yet the site is hardly unimportant. Otherwise, why draw attention to it so incessantly, right? That the Torah tells us that it just got late, the sun had gone down, so he stops in this place just to rest. It seems almost unimportant, as Rabbi Shorsh says, but then we know that something miraculous happens, and he has this dream, and he calls this place Beit El, right? The house of God, because I've encountered God. The Torah repeats the word makom 3 times to emphasize not only the gradual geographic place, the actual geographic place, but to point out that God brought Jacob to a place of tension. It's meant to raise all these challenging ideas, this place of tension. That is why, interestingly, there is one other way to translate the phrase Vayifga b'makom. In Rabbinic Hebrew, the common noun makom for place is often used as a proper noun for God. Hence, the phrase Vayifga b'makom can also mean, midrashically, that Jacob encountered God, or basically turned to God in prayer. As Jacob is fleeing for his life from his brother Esav, he is caught in a place of tension, wrestling with God himself and the world in which he lives. It was in this place of uncertainty, of tension, where Jacob encountered God. That is why the text can also be read as Vayifga b'makom, and Jacob encountered God. He didn't just go to this place, he encounters God. We then continue in verse 12, Vayachalom, and he dreamed. Vehine sulam mutzav artza, and there was a ladder that reached up into the heavens. V'rosho magia hashemayma, in its top, that its bottom it touched the ground, and and he dreamed and beheld the ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached into heaven, and behold, the angels of God ascended and descended upon it. Throughout Jewish history, commentators have argued over the exact meaning of Jacob's vision. What is it supposed to mean? He has this vision of a ladder, and angels are seen going up and coming down. Interestingly, the vagueness of the Hebrew does not help. In my opinion, there are two ways to understand the phrase Malachei Elohim olim v'yordim bo. In the first way of reading this passage, Jacob represents the medium by which God's blessings are imparted into the world, and then later through his descendants. The story of the Sulam Yaakov, of Jacob's ladder, is a reminder of God's direct interaction into the affairs of humanity, right? So one way to read this is to see Jacob as the medium of blessing. We must ask ourselves, however, why do the angels first ascend and then descend? Doesn't this seem to be the opposite of what you would expect? If you saw this ladder that reached up to heaven, shouldn't the angels be coming down from heaven and then going back up? But that's not what it says, right? And words are never wasted in the Torah, so what's going on? The sages understood that this is a changing of the guard, if you will. The description is that the angels first ascend and then descend, which leads us to believe that there were angelic escorts with Jacob as he fled his home. In the dream, Jacob was given the ability to see those angels who were with him ascend back into heaven as a new host of heaven descend to meet him for the next stage of his journey. For the journey ahead will be full of trials as he is tricked and then taken advantage of repeatedly by Lavan. The new angelic escort will be with Yaakov to teach him what he needs to be in order to be a patriarch of Israel, and to turn what Lavan meant for evil into blessings for Yaakov and his family. So do you understand? Like the way the sages see it is this is a changing of the guard. We all, according to the book of Hebrews, entertain angels unaware, right? And we know that there are hosts of heaven that surround us, is at least what we are taught. When I was reading this morning, I was thinking of even the prayer that we say at, the first prayer when we sit down for our Shabbat meal, we sing Shalom Aleichem, right? Shalom Aleichem is a greeting, peace be upon you, Malachei Asharet, the heavenly angels. That we recognize that on Shabbat, like Jacob had here, that we receive angels, an extra group of angels on Shabbat, who then leave us when Shabbat is over, right? There's this sense of angels all throughout the Hebrew Bible, throughout the New Testament, even throughout our Jewish liturgy, that talk about this idea that we're surrounded by angels. Therefore, as a patriarch of the Jewish people, Jacob served as an embodiment, a vehicle through which God's blessings would be imparted into the earth. Is everybody tracking with me so far? It's a little technical as I'm talking about the Hebrew itself. However, because I want to first way is to understand that the ladder in some way represents Jacob, right, as the conduit of blessing, and also this idea of a changing of the guard of angels, okay? But I mentioned earlier that there's this vagueness in the Hebrew, and so now I want to show you a way the New Testament uses the vagueness of the Hebrew in order to midrashically apply it to Yeshua. Is everybody still with me? All right. So there is another way to read this phrase, Malachei Elohim Olim V'Yordim Bo. We read in John chapter 1, beginning of verse 40, one of the two who had heard Yochanan, John the Immerser, and had followed Yeshua was Andrew, the brother of Shimon Kepha. The first thing he did was to find his brother Shimon and tell him, "We have found the Messiah. We found the Mashiach." He took him to Yeshua. Looking at him, Yeshua said, "You are Shimon bar Yochanan. You will now be known as Kepha," which means the rock. That's why in Greek he's called Petros, right? Because that means rock. But in the New Testament, you'll see in many translations it says Cephas or Kephas. It's kind of a Greekized or Latinized of the Aramaic, which is Kepha. Kepha is rock. The next day, having decided to leave for the Galilee, Yeshua found Philip and said, "Follow me." And Philip was from Veyetze, the town where Andrew and Kepha lived. Philip then found Nathanael and told him, "We found the one that Moses wrote about in the Torah, also the prophets. It's Yeshua ben Yosef from Nazareth." And Nathanael answered him, "Nazareth? Can anything good come from there?" And they said, "Come and see." Philip said to him. Yeshua saw Nathanael coming toward him and remarked about him, "Here is a true son of Israel, nothing false in him." And Nathanael said to him, "How do you know me?" Yeshua answered him, "Before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you." And Nathanael said, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." And Yeshua answered him, "You believe all of this just because I told you I saw you under the fig tree? You will see greater things than these." Then he said to him, "Yes, indeed, I tell you that you will see heaven opened and the angels of God going up and coming down on the Son of Man." The Hebrew phrase we earlier translated, "and the angels of God were ascending and descending upon it," meaning the ladder, can also be rendered as the angels of God ascended and descended upon him. If you know this word bo, right, that I said Malachei Elohim, the angels of God, Olim, it's from the word Allah, to go up, Aliyah, Allah. V'yordim, Yarad means to go down. Al is upon. And then bo is, this can either be translated as it or him. So what the New Testament is doing a word play, it's not using the Greek of the Septuagint, it's because this only works in Hebrew. And so he's using this idea, the word play and the vagueness of it, which can be him or the Hebrew says it or him, and applies it to him, meaning Yeshua, and then says, Al ben Adam, upon the Son of Man. This is why John says, "Yes, indeed, I tell you that you will see heaven opened." And again, this is the angels going up and going down, ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. So in this passage, Yeshua clarifies that he is now the embodiment and the vehicle of God's work in the earth, and that ultimately through him is access in the heavenly realms. Jacob encountered God in a place of tension and uncertainty. It was only when everything was stripped from him and he is running for his life did he have his first major encounter with God. Right? Jacob is not the person that we read about having these amazing divine encounters like Abraham did or subsequent patriarchs. His encounter with God is when he's fleeing for his life and he's in this place of tension that God finds him. Somehow in uncertainty, we are able to find certainty. Not in a physical place, but in God. As Rabbi Isamar Shorsh commented, it is in those places of tension where God is often most accessible. And he writes, "It is not the holiness of our setting, but the sincerity of our seeking that determines our ability to hear God's voice." And that is also why we read in the passage in John an invitation. And I love this in verse 46. Nathanael answered him, "Nazareth, can anything good come from there?" And what does Philip say to him? "Come and see." Come and see. The invitation in the midst of uncertainty was to come and see, to experience goodness firsthand. We find many examples of this throughout the Tanakh, but Psalm 34:9, for example, says, "Ta'amu ur'u kitov Adonai, ashrei hagever yechaseh bo." Taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the one who takes refuge in him. It's an invitation to try God, to challenge God, right? Taste and see that the Lord is good. Or Nathanael in his doubt, can anything good come from Galilee? Come and see. As we all wrestle in this place of tension and uncertainty, our faiths rocked by everything going on around us, let's find shelter in God's presence. Vayifka b'makom. Let's encounter God even in our moments of difficulty and tension. And let's take up the challenge of John to take a step of faith in the midst of the trials, to come and see. Let's find a way this morning to taste and see that the Lord is good. Avinu, our Father, as all of us are wrestling with so much personally in our own lives, for those of us who are so weighted down by the situation in Israel and other things that are going on in the world around us, it's easy to be distracted. It's easy to lose hope, to lose sight, to lose faith. And we need to be reminded of these words, not only from our Torah portion, but how it's linked then in the Gospel of John. To come and taste and see that the Lord is good. God, we need to see your goodness, your graciousness, your peace, your wholeness, your healing, your breakthrough, your deliverance. As we're in this week of Thanksgiving, God, that we would give thanks, to enter your gates with thanksgiving and into your courts with praise, God. Help us to do more of that. Help us to live lives that are postured in your presence, to be sensitive to when you are moving and to what you are saying, to what you are speaking. Because we live in a world where it's getting, for many, harder and harder to do that. And so we have to work even harder to be more in tune with your Spirit, to what you're doing, what you want to do, what you will do, what you are doing right now. Give us hope, give us faith, give us strength, give us endurance. Impart your peace within us. Impart your peace upon Israel, on the situation in Gaza, that you would protect even innocent Palestinians, God. And may we be those who stand in the gap, praying and interceding for your will to be done on this earth. Pray this in the name of Yeshua. Amen.